So, according to China, or according to this video, Trump's tariff ruined China's master plan. He's going to break it down.
The CCP wants to defend global trade, but they're the ones who destroyed it in the first place. And I'll tell you exactly how they did it.
It's cool. I've been watching this. What is it? China Observer. China Uncensored. There's China Uncensored that I normally watch, and also there's China Observer, which is right over here. So it talks about what's going on in China and everything else. So this guy's pretty funny. So
Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. YouTube has been trying to suppress China Uncensored and promote pro-CCP content, but we're fighting back and winning. Join me in Operation Honeypot Phase 3. Leave a honeypot comment to show YouTube we've got engagement, and subscribe to our free newsletter to subvert YouTube's censorship. The link is below. So,
honeypot.
The Chinese Communist Party is freaking out about U.S. tariffs. They've launched a full-on propaganda blitz, calling the tariffs abuse and blackmail. If anyone is an expert on abuse and blackmail, it's the CCP.
Wow.
The CCP is also claiming to be the defender of global trade. Yes, China is going to safeguard multilateralism and the multilateral trading system.
China is willing to work together with countries, including Canada, to safeguard multilateralism and multilateral trading system. Yeah, I bet Canada would work with them. Isn't that Canada the one also that refused to work with the United States when it comes to tariff? There's just two, Canada and China, I think. And all 70 plus countries are calling Trump to work a deal with them, but not China and Canada.
And they totally are. I'm not being sarcastic here. They really are. The CCP is going to fight for the current global trading system. It's not because they love international cooperation, which is just propaganda BS.
Yeah.
It's because the CCP has spent decades manipulating global trade to their advantage. So there's
well, it's not just manipulating. I think it's also they're good at bullying other countries. Like the Philippines, Taiwan, neighboring countries like Vietnam.
Way. They're going to let all that lying and cheating go to waste.
Of course not.
Plus, global trade is basically the only thing keeping China's economy afloat. The CCP wants the world to believe that it's U.S. tariffs that are throwing a whatever this is into the gears of the world.
Isn't that sounds like the liberals in the United States also believes about that Trump is the one that disrupting the world economy, or disrupting the world or the United States economy and putting people in danger.
Economy. But the truth is, it's the CCP that spent decades destroying the world economy.
True.
And in today's episode, I'll show you how they did it and why. China is an export economy.
Show us.
That means their economy relies on manufacturing stuff for the rest of the world to buy. Chinese manufacturing exploded after China joined the World Trade Organization in 2001. Because China was able to make stuff more cheaply than other countries, consumers around the world benefited from lower prices on Chinese imports. But countries also lost tons of manufacturing jobs to China. The U.S. alone lost more than 2 million jobs between 1999 and 2011 as a result.
Yeah, it's not just jobs, it's just also the innovations. People, there's stories after stories about how they invented something and they contacted a manufacturer in China to create those products and items, and all of a sudden there's another products that are more cheaper, and they have competitors with those, so they steal. Chinese government. I'm not talking about people, because Chinese people are good, and there's good and bad, and any other any other race, basically. So yeah, so they steal innovation, they steal projects, they steal customers.
Result of Chinese imports. Now, besides manufacturing, the other big driver of China's recent economic growth was real estate investment, which became a problem after China's real estate market started to collapse in 2020. So the CCP decided to double down on manufacturing. They pumped billions of dollars into building more factories and exporting more goods to keep China's economy from crashing, which did work. But now, China is making way more stuff than the rest of the world can buy. That's called overcapacity. How bad is it?
I like how you do that. It's like what do you call that? Like Dora the Explorer kind of thing. Yay! Overcapacity.
Here's a chart from the U.S. Treasury Department showing supply and demand. If trade was healthy, the red and blue lines would be roughly the same.
What? Let me see what it is. Global battery demand compared to China's supply. Global source. So that would be China's supply is the red. Holy cow! Yeah.
But the fact that the red lines are way above the blue shows that China is making way more batteries, solar panels, and electric vehicles than the rest of the world wants. And because China has so much overcapacity, it also doesn't import much from other countries, which means China now has a trade surplus of almost $1 trillion. That's more than any country's trade surplus in the past century.
China's vast exports exceeded import on scale seldom seen anywhere except during or immediately after the two world wars. So after, wow.
Even adjusted for inflation. And China doesn't show signs of stopping. Its export volume is growing 3 times as fast as global trade. That's insane. So what happens when China exports more and more stuff? They have to cut prices to be able to sell it all, which means other countries lose even more jobs to China. Entire industries shut down. There are now certain products you can only buy from China. And when those are critical things like medical supplies, that gives China massive political and economic leverage on other countries.
True.
Remember when China stopped exporting medical goods during the early days of COVID? Yeah, that, but on an even bigger scale. That's why the Chinese Communist Party is fighting to maintain the global trading system. They dominate it, and without it, China's economy would fail, and their political control would crumble. But how did China get here? It's not just about cheap labor. The CCP has built an entire economic system to dominate global trade. Back when China joined the World Trade Organization in 2001, they promised to follow rules to ensure fair trade practices. To be fair to the CCP, something I never thought I'd say, they did make a bunch of economic reforms in order to get into the WTO. But after they joined, they violated the WTO rules repeatedly. They've been cheating the system for decades and largely getting away with it. You see, the WTO rules are set up to prevent government intervention that would artificially distort global trade. But in a communist system, it's government intervention all the way down. Last month, the Rhodium Group published a report called Far From Normal that looks at how China's state support distorts global trade.
Far from normal assessment compared to other countries, China's approach to industrial policy has been characterized by broader, more. Okay.
For a look at the CCP system, let's use a specific product as an example to make it easier to follow. Take honey production. Why? No particular reason. Here's how the CCP makes a product like honey more cheap.
I see what they did there. Oh, man.
Than other countries. First, they use direct government subsidies. They give money to industries they want to support. 99% of major Chinese companies listed on the stock exchange get government grants. 99%. In our example, farmers that harvest honey or factories that process honey. The CCP also gives industries tax concessions, so honey producers might not pay any taxes. The CCP also uses below-market finance. That means they would let honey producers borrow money at lower interest rates from state-owned banks, or state-owned banks would invest money in these companies without expecting much of a return on their investment. And they also sell goods at below-market prices to these industries. For example, selling cheap land to honey farmers, or providing cheap electricity for honey processors. This industrial policy is incredibly effective for the CCP. It's how the CCP jump-started its entire electric vehicle industry, and they're now flooding the rest of the world with cheap EVs. Yes, these are all things that other countries do too, but no one does them on the same scale as the CCP. In 2019, the CCP spent almost $250 billion on its industrial policy. Wow. That's massive. But it's not just industrial policy. There are also ways China's entire financial system distorts global trade. Like everything in China, the financial system is political. All banks in China are either state-owned or state-linked, so the CCP controls how they give out loans. Which means state-owned banks give lots of loans to state-owned enterprises and to other companies the CCP wants to support. And if those companies can't pay them back, the banks just keep extending the loans, because it's better to take the financial risk than to risk getting on the CCP's bad side. So the CCP's huge and politicized financial system has resulted in an explosion of credit and of debt, and lots of companies are exporting Chinese goods even if they aren't actually profitable. What could go wrong? There's lots of other stuff I could talk about here too, like how the CCP restricts China's market access and discriminates against foreign firms, but I think you get the picture.
Oh yeah.
The CCP's industrial policy and financial system is destroying the global trading system. More countries have stopped relying on the World Trade Organization to stop the CCP's unfair practices. Instead, they're putting their own tariffs on Chinese goods, like Europe's tariffs on China's EVs. Or President Trump's tariffs on China's everything. But in the past, the CCP has been able to get around a lot of tariffs. What I talked about before was the cheating part. Now this is the lying part. It's called transshipment, where China transfers goods to a second country where the Made in China label is switched for another.
Yeah.
This happens with a ton of Chinese products.
Yep, just like the neighboring countries, just like I said, the neighboring countries around China, they bullying them. That's why they're also the United States government is actually putting tariff, especially in those around or countries that have dealt with China or dealing with China,
including Chinese honey. The U.S. has had anti-dumping tariffs on Chinese honey since 2001. So Chinese exporters have tried to get around it with what's called honey laundering. Yes, I'm not kidding. Chinese honey is shipped to countries like Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore, India, Dubai, even the Bahamas, and then sent to the U.S. to avoid tariffs.
There we go. Manipulations again.
In some cases,
they've been doing that for decades. That's what, they think that they keep continue doing that. Now with Trump in office.
Chinese honey contains antibiotics that are illegal in the U.S. In other cases, it's been diluted with rice syrup or ultra-filtered to disguise that it's from China. And guess what? Most imported honey is used in processed foods. So you don't know if your Honey Nut Cheerios are really Honey Nut China-O's. But the point is, China has been able to evade tariffs for years.
Decades.
Which is why the Trump administration's new tariffs are aimed at those.
Yes, sir. Look at that. Trump blocked America's front doors to China. Now he's closing back doors. That's right.
Those backdoor transshipment countries, too. Yeah, everyone thought tariffing those remote islands full of penguins was dumb until now. So that's how the CCP's industrial policy, their financial system, and their export system are all designed to manipulate global trade. They've kept China's economy going while hurting other countries.
Yeah.
Both advanced economies and developing economies are dealing with the fallout.
Yeah.
But it's gotten so bad that the rest of the world has no choice but to fight back.
Yeah.
Not just the US, but also Europe. And as a result, we may be watching the collapse of global free trade. And it's the CCP's fault. So what happens to China if this happens? Well,
No, I don't think it's gonna. I mean, it will probably disrupt it, but I don't think it's gonna collapse in a way. Like, look at that. There's 75 countries wanna, that responded to Trump's tariff, and they're willing to talk. They're willing to, make deals. But look at the China. China is like kind of. I think that was a bait. I think there was a Trump trying to bait China and see if they're, because what China's want to do is also to get other countries to be in their side. Well, guess what? It's only Canada that actually want to work with side to side with China. Canada, the neighboring Canada of the United States. Believe that? Can you believe that?
that's a whole nother episode. Let me know in the comments below if you want to see an episode on how China is running out of money.
Ooh, yeah, I believe that. I believe it that China's running out of things because even their own people complaining, hurting.
I woke up and all our orders were gone. Because of these new tariffs from the US, every American client is telling us to pause production and delay our plans. This is a mess.
Wow.
There's a video showing how bad things have gotten. It's like the sky has fallen. Orders were canceled because of the US tariffs. Warehouses are packed with unsold products, and the factory floor is basically just being cleaned now, with no real work happening. Ever since Trump raised tariffs, businesses in mainland China have been feeling the chill. Even though CCP General Secretary Xi Jinping talks tough about retaliating against Trump's tariffs, the truth is the Chinese government doesn't care about how much regular people are losing.
They don't.
And hitting back will only bring even harsher responses.
Just like, because, they don't care about their own citizens. Well, why would you think that they would care about other countries', people? They don't. They don't care.
America, as the buyer, is the one setting the rules.
Yeah.
If the seller tries to challenge them, they'll lose badly, ending up
It's
with
common
nothing.
sense.
On
It's
April
common
8th,
sense. Unless you have other buyers, like unless you have like multiple buyers that you can just, but the what do you call it? China's large. United States is the largest buyers from China. In the sense of like Amazon, Temu, other businesses that buy stuff from China, or buys all the, like, especially clothes. Look at clothings. I would say 90% of that's coming from China. Shirts.
President Trump officially signed an executive order to raise tariffs on Chinese goods to 104%.
They will be going into effect at 12:01 a.m. tonight, so effectively tomorrow. Yes.
That
That
last week.
104% rate is now in effect. China has vowed to fight to the end in this trade war, but the real tariff rate is even higher because this 104% is on top of the 20% already in place from Trump's
125.
first term. That means the average tariff on Chinese goods is now close to 125%. One man in China posted a video calling on the Chinese people and the government to stay clear-headed. With tariffs going up like this, he advised they shouldn't go head-to-head with the US. Otherwise, they'd be gambling with people's livelihoods.
这2天我实在是看不下去了。
These past couple days, I've had enough. Stop talking about fighting the US over tariffs like it's some action movie. Acting tough is a dead end. Making money is what actually matters. The US has 350 million people and takes up a third of global consumer orders. Think about that. Out of every $3 spent around the world, one comes from the US. The EU has 450 million people, but their purchasing power is nowhere close to America's. We've got 1.4 billion people in China working ourselves to the bone, but our spending power is only about 1/5 of America's. The numbers don't lie. Cursing the US. For being a bully doesn't put food on the table. The US dollar is still the passport to the global market.
See, look, the Trump administrations and the U.S. just want China to be fair. They just want China to be, to do what is good. By meaning like stop stealing from other company, stop bullying other countries, and come to the table and work it out. Work out the deal. But no, just like the guy said, they've got pride and high-minded people that thinking that, oh, we can beat America. Just like how like the liberals in America right now, and they think that America is the bad guy, and he thinks it's a movie.
Everyone's shouting about how we don't need the American market. Wake up. The American market is valuable. Numbers speak louder than slogans. Instead of shouting about resistance, we should be thinking about how to make money within the existing rules. When your wallet is full of US dollars, then you can talk about upgrading industries or ditching the dollar. Until then, it's all just talk. Lower your head, make money, it's not shameful. Betting ordinary people's lives on pride, that's the real stupidity.
A business owner in Tangshan, Hebei, tried to fight back using what you'd call mental victory tactics. He put up a big sign on the screen in his shop. It said, "Starting today, we will charge American customers an extra 104% service fee. If you don't understand, please contact the US Embassy." A netizen hit him with the perfect response. "Dude, do you even have any American customers?" And the boss said, "Nope." So how is that retaliation? On the evening of April 8th, US time, after announcing a 104% tariff on Chinese imports, Trump attended the National Republican
That's pretty funny.
Congressional Committee's President's Dinner and accused the Chinese Communist Party of manipulating currency to
They've
offset the
been
impact of tariffs.
manipulating it.
As the US-China trade war intensifies, Beijing let the yuan fall to a historic low of 7.4 against the dollar on April 8th, something it hadn't done in 19 months. This was the lowest rate since September 2023. For a long time, investors considered 7.2 to be a soft bottom line that China would not let the currency fall below. According to the Financial Times, China's central bank set the exchange rate right at 7.2 the following Tuesday, basically signaling that they're willing to let the yuan drop further in order to cushion the blow from U.S. tariffs. Wen Lucheng posted on Facebook that Trump has made his position very clear. If the Chinese government doesn't back down, he won't just refuse to negotiate, he'll double down. This isn't a negotiation anymore, it's an ultimatum. In reality, it's more like a declaration of economic war. Wen said that if China backs down now, it could trigger a wave of nationalism at home and seriously challenge Xi Jinping's legitimacy. So the Chinese government is probably trying to figure out how much of a hit they can take from these 100% tariffs, and whether they can use domestic consumption or third-party markets to make up for the export losses. As long as things hold up inside China, they might just keep pushing through. On April 4th, Trump announced reciprocal tariffs on countries around the world. While roughly 70 countries rushed to negotiate and avoid damage to their own people, the Chinese government chose to retaliate with a 34% tariff on U.S. goods, and vowed to fight the U.S. to the end. On April 7th, Trump warned that if China doesn't roll back these retaliatory tariffs, he'd slap another 50% tariff on top of what was already
That means that's eventually going to cut off China.
announced by April 9th. That would be a record high. And China didn't back down. On April 7th, the Chinese state media, People's Daily,
Of course not, because like I said, the Chinese government don't care about their people. They don't. This is what's going to happen if the Americans are going to get hit, but I doubt they will. Just a little bit, probably. I mean, you see a lot of people crying already. But if we get hit like really bad to where it can't buy any, or the really high prices and people are struggling, a huge number. I'm talking about a huge number of people. I mean, United States will probably cave in, to the point. Because they care about people. Or we care about people. But China, they don't care. They're going to let their citizens suffer.
published an article titled "The Sky Won't Fall," saying that U.S. tariffs won't crush China's economy, and that China has the confidence and ability to handle external shocks. The article kept repeating, "The sky won't fall." But the stock market didn't agree. Chinese A-shares plummeted after the announcement, like the sky was really falling. Right before Trump announced the additional 50% tariffs, a WeChat public account with ties to the Chinese government called Niu Tanqing published a piece on April 8th saying China was ready to hit back with at least 6 major countermeasures. 1. Massively increasing tariffs on American soybeans, sorghum, and other agricultural goods. China views this as a response to U.S. bullying. 2. Banning American poultry imports. Due to frequent bird flu outbreaks in the U.S., some in China are urging a total ban to protect public health. 3. Suspending fentanyl cooperation. The article claimed that the U.S. has ignored China's humanitarian efforts and instead smeared and blamed China. So the foundation for cooperation on fentanyl has been badly damaged. 4. Countermeasures in service trade. This includes restricting American companies from participating in government procurement and legal consulting in China. Since the U.S. has a big surplus in service exports to China, this would directly hurt U.S. interests. 5. Banning American movies. Sources say China is considering reducing or outright banning U.S. film imports in response to the rising tariff threats. 6. Investigating intellectual property profits made by U.S. companies in China. Chinese authorities might launch investigations into the large profits American firms make off their IP in China. But the man we met earlier had something else to say.
你去东南亚卖货，那收印尼盾。
You try selling to Southeast Asia and you're getting paid in Indonesian rupiah. You sell in South America, you're getting pesos. In a blink, currency exchange rates eat up your profits. But when you sell to the US, you're getting US dollars, money you can spend anywhere in the world. Look at the Russia-Ukraine war. No matter how bad that got, the US dollar still sits on top as the king of global currencies. That's just the reality. If you walk away from the dollar system, you're basically giving up your ticket to participate in global trade. People talk about shifting to Africa or Latin America, but come on, our brothers in Africa don't even have steady electricity. How are they supposed to buy your appliances? Only the US has 300...
It just makes me laugh. Some brothers and I mean, this guy. I don't know who he is, but you gotta be careful when you talk bad about the Chinese government, because your life might be in danger, dude.
100 million middle-class consumers ready to pay cash. No games, no credit delays. Even with the sanctions these past couple of years, it's still the cleanest, most straightforward market in the world. Compared to all the places where you have to bribe or beg just to do business, the US is like a commercial paradise. One thing you have to remember, capital is 10,000 times smarter than you.
这2天我实在是看不下去了。
The reality is, if you're cut off from the US, the world's main consumption engine, your products won't even have the chance to lose money just for exposure. Relying on Russia or Iran, those countries are barely staying afloat by selling off their own resources. It's easy to bash US hegemony, but hard to face reality. In the global industrial chain, whoever has the buying power is king. The US holds just 5% of the world's population, but drives a third of global consumption. That is absolute market dominance.
On April 8th, veteran US-based journalist Wang Fei posted on X, "What's the CCP going to do now? If they drop the tariffs, what happens to their pride? And for the CCP, pride equals the authority of their rule. Lose that, and regime instability follows. But if they don't drop the tariffs, US-China trade grinds to a halt, and the Chinese economy plunges into negative growth overnight. Again, regime instability. This is what you call lose your head if you go forward, lose your head if you turn back." Dong Jielin, a scholar of China's tech industrial policy and former columnist for Wall Street Journal's Chinese edition, also weighed in on X. He said, "What started as a global trade war led by the U.S. has now quickly turned into a U.S.-China trade war. According to Dong, the consequences for China could include 1. China's massive trade surplus of over $1 trillion US, no matter which countries it comes from, is mostly tied directly or indirectly to the U.S. That surplus will basically be wiped out. 2. China's current industrial overcapacity needs to be cut in half. When that bubble bursts, the impact could be just as devastating as the collapse of the real estate sector. 3. Massive job losses and serious threats to social stability. All the international frameworks China has invested in, like the Belt and Road Initiative, BRICS, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, are filled with partners mostly looking to profit off China.
Yeah.
Once the
All right.
benefits
All right, I'm gonna link the both of the video that I showed in the description, so you can watch it fully. But that's it for now. Until next time, we'll keep an eye on this.